Hi, my name is Shauna Williams. I have been asked by Dr. Brent to do this lecture, and I'm really excited to talk about a way that you can integrate a career in sexuality and in social work, and that can be as a perinatal support professional. And there's a lot of ways you can do that. Working in the birth work world, the way that I do it is I work as a doula and a lactation professional, and I also do therapy in the realm of perinatal work. So I'll talk a little bit about that, but before I do, I just want to introduce myself. So I work at Widener in the social work department, the Center for Social Work, in the BSW program, the MSW program, teaching. I also am the director of Social Work Counseling Services, which is Widener's very own human service clinic. So you may have heard about us. And I also am an alum of the dual degree program. And I graduated and worked for several years as a therapist. And then I went on to start my own business. SW Doula LLC is the name of my business. I work as a doula and as a counselor. I'll talk a little bit about that. And I also am a certified lactation counselor. In that counseling realm, I also work solely as a clinical provider, as a therapist, and I specialize in a lot of different types of supports, but in perinatal mental health is one of the areas that I specialize in. And I also do research as part of my my ongoing education as a PhD student in the program. And my focus of my PhD research is around the intersections of trauma, African American folks, and breastfeeding or maternal and infant health outcomes. So I became a dual degree student because I had worked already in the field as a sex educator and as a diversity educator before going to college. And both of those areas, I saw that there was a lot of trauma coming up in my workshops that I did. And so I wanted to find a way to really provide more support to individuals. And so I went to Widener, I got my BSW, I got my MSW, I got my Master's of Human Sexuality Education. And when I worked as a social worker, I started out in child welfare as a case manager. I also worked providing support to folks with IDD, particularly children and families. I worked as a family therapist. I did outpatient work. I worked as a religious counselor, as a Christian counselor. And in all of those arenas, I really had to carve out my own niche because sexuality wasn't always forefront in those fields. I started out really only wanting to do sexuality work with social work kind of as an undergirding aspect of the work that I did. And then the longer I was in school, I realized that I would kind of lean more towards social work and wanted just a strong understanding of sexuality. And you should be aware that your view of what's most prominent in your career search and what you want to do may change, and you should be open to that. But also be open to the fact that you may have to start working in some other fields that you didn't plan on doing, but you can find your own way to integrate sexuality work into that. And folks who were watching me kind of go through my career kept giving me suggestions. They kept saying, be a sex therapist, be a sex educator. But it just never felt quite right. I just couldn't seem to find the niche that was a good fit for me in particular. So I came to perinatal work through my own parenting journey. And perinatal is a word that basically refers to the period of being pregnant, having a child, and being in the postpartum period. So I had challenges becoming a parent in all three of those arenas. I really struggled in just feeding my child, birthing my child, my pregnancy outcomes. I had some really negative experiences. And so it just led me to want to support other folks. I started doing that informally, like online and support groups online that I was in. And then I also did some community work. I started getting involved with the Delaware County Breastfeeding Coalition, and I ended up becoming the chairperson of that. I also started doing my own research in the doctoral program and decided I kind of wanted to focus my research in that area. And as part of my research, I kept hearing about doulas and the work that doulas do. And so I decided I would go to a doula training, and I wanted one specific trainer who did a lot of work around maternal mortality in the Black community. And I went to her training just for research purposes, and I walked out saying, I have to become a doula. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but it has to happen. And so I started to do doula work, and then I just added on some other pieces as it relates to going back to my first love of doing therapy and supporting folks around breastfeeding as well. So, a little bit about what doulas do. Doulas are trained in the midwifery model of care, but we are not midwives. We don't provide medical support. We provide emotional, physical, and educational support throughout pregnancy and during the first year. And we also provide often continuous support during labor and birth, although not all doulas want to do that. And that can look like helping with breathing, helping you advocate for yourself with doctors, helping your family feel safe in the birthing setting, doing positions like this woman on the slide is doing that can increase your comfort. And so we work in a lot of different ways. And so, my work as a doula is different from social work in the sense that I do a lot of touching that probably wouldn't normally happen in the social work setting. But I do that in a way that is really determined by my client, and it relates to their birth plan. And so, self determination is one of our core values in social work. And I find that I really engage with that as a doula. Also, I use a framework of reproductive justice. So it really is social justice based as it relates to birthing justice. I use a lot of discussions in psychoed around consent and how to get consent with folks that you are birthing with. So the OBGYN or the birthing center or during a home birth. And I also engage in a lot of role plays around consent and things like that as it relates to, can I touch them? Are they okay with me providing different sorts of interventions to them? And I really use a lot of unconditional positive regard and collaborative work with the whole family system. And birth is a very spiritual thing, and it's also really grounded in culture, what's going to feel good for someone. So there's a lot of that aspect that relates to social work as well. Also, this is a field that really is burgeoning and offering support with folks who are most vulnerable, and that includes queer folks and minority folks. My practice in particular, I focus on folks like those populations that may have more at risk or negative outcomes because of the system and the way that they're not being supported. But I also focus on folks who already have experiences of trauma or mental health challenges coming into the perinatal period. I want to talk quickly about my work as a lactation professional. And so I am a certified lactation consultant, or excuse me, a certified lactation counselor, which essentially is a CLC. It is not the highest level of lactation profession you can have. The highest level is a IBCLC, Internationally Board Certified Lactation Consultant. But as a CLC, I really go in and provide general support to folks. I really enjoy this work, and I feel like it integrates with social work because lactation really is a social justice issue. We know that some folks in some populations struggle more with higher infant mortality rates, like African American folks and indigenous communities. So this is a way that is proven to help reduce the infant mortality rate. It's also about food justice because it's a sustainable way of feeding your child that is low cost or free. Reproductive justice is based in this really, and it really relates to sexuality ed because we're doing a lot of general discussion around your body and how it works. Economic justice because companies make a lot of money off of selling formula. Some folks need formula, but actually what we know is that many times people believe they're not able to provide milk to their children because they haven't gotten the support that they deserve. And there's a lot of work being done around inclusivity of queer parents, non binary folks providing human milk to their babies, using inclusive language like chest feeding. So these are all things that are really starting to come to the forefront in this field. And in perinatal mental health, this is really an aspect of mental health work counseling that's really becoming very specialized. There's more trainings being provided for folks because it's different from a typical mood disorder, and it's different from a typical anxiety disorder. What's really neat about perinatal mental health as it relates to the intersection of sexuality and social work also relates to the fact that people often are coming in around issues of sexuality, issues that are happening as their identity development as it relates to who am I as a person, as now I'm a parent, who am I as a partner, how does my partner adjust to having a child, how does sex occur in our relationship, how does dating occur, what does our family look like as it relates to us as a nuclear family now. And so it's a lot of work that I really pull on a lot of my sexuality education. Also, my work as a doula has really informed how I do mental health work in general, because I use a lot of somatic techniques and body work that I wouldn't have felt necessarily comfortable with. Being a doula really helped me feel more comfortable in using those sort of techniques with my clients. So, why are folks with our type of specific education integration needed in this field? Well, the birth world, first of all, is really just getting a hold of the idea that trauma exists, and it exists in birthing experiences. And so, as social workers, we're bringing that knowledge. But also, maternal health is very gendered. It's called maternal health, for goodness sakes. So, families who are queer or non binary really feel left out of the discussion and experience so many microaggressions. Also, this is a real social justice issue around maternal mortality as well. We know that Black folks and Indigenous folks are at extremely high rates of maternal mortality, or the parent who's giving birth dying during birth. And so doulas have been shown to be an effective intervention in that way. And perinatal support goes a long way to provide what's needed to families during that time to help them make it through. Psychoeducation is a piece of it, so being comfortable with talking about sexuality and sexuality terms. Perinatal mood disorder really looks at all the different ways that families are affected, and so we bring that knowledge to be able to go back and forth between sexual health and talking about mental health. Couple issues are really a big deal during the perinatal period, and they're often not discussed. Because pregnancy and sexuality is often not discussed in the same conversation. If you're interested in that, you can look up Orgasmic Birth as an organization. They do a lot of great work, but we need more people who are able to talk about how birth and pregnancy is part of sexuality and sexual development. Lastly, there's a lot of ways that perinatal professionals present. So there's childbirth education, as you can see here. This person is showing another person about the uterus and how contractions are happening. But there's lots of different ways you can be a doula. There's some doulas that focus on supporting folks through abortion. There's some who work on supporting folks around fertility. There are even folks who are coming forward now as sex doulas, so really providing support to around sexuality to folks in a way that doesn't require the education that we have, but we are really going to be able to bring a lot to that work. There's even people who support people at the end of life, death doulas. There's a lot of advocacy work that can be done at the micro level and at the macro level in reproductive justice and in policy work. We now hear, even during the presidential campaign, folks are now talking about Black maternal mortality, which has been a long-standing issue. We're just now hearing about it. And so, with that being said, I could talk all day about how much I love the work that I do and how I am so happy I finally found a way to combine these two worlds of mine that in a way that makes sense for me. If you're interested in learning more and talking longer about this, you can reach out to me via email. smwilliams2@widener.edu is the best way to reach me. My phone number is here as well, 610-499-4684, but I'm usually not at my desk, so email is really the best way to reach me. If you follow me on Facebook, you'll see my page really incorporates a lot of discussion about birth, and also my therapy work in some ways really relating to perinatal mental health and parenting in those early years. And my website, if you want to check that out for my business, is www.myswdoula.com. And so I look forward to hearing from folks who might be interested in talking more about this. Otherwise, I hope this was informative, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.